Welcome back to the Token Intelligence Show, where John and I try to navigate AI, business, and life, and you get to follow along
in real time
and hopefully learn from us. Today's episode is all about whether or not and how skills might atrophy in the age of AI, where we have machines doing a lot of work on our behalf. And there was a post on X from the CEO of Vercel that I thought was really interesting this week. It reminded me of a conversation that we had last week with a bunch of people about skill atrophy.
Yeah.
And the post says, if you don't use your body, it atrophies. So you go to the gym or on a run. If you don't use your brain, it atrophies. So what's your plan?
Wow.
Yeah. Kind of a nice, spicy hot take, but he's good at that.
Any good top responses on that one?
Let's see. I can look through. Write shaders, play chess, talk philosophy, read books.
Okay.
This is actually interesting. I thought about this. Go to a mind gym, next $1 billion idea.
A mind gym.
I actually thought about that.
Isn't that just Sudoku? Newspaper crossword puzzles.
Sudoku is a mind gym.
The New York Times crossword puzzles.
Yeah,
and Wordle.
yeah. Wordle, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here's how I'll start the conversation. What skills have you felt atrophy in the age of AI? Because you and I use AI tools extensively every day.
And probably differently, too.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, good question. I think AI is best at coding, so I think it's natural. Like if you do any coding at all,
yes,
that's, it is better at coding than just about anything else. So that for sure, to some extent.
So your personal coding skills have atrophied.
Writing
by
code.
handwriting code.
But reading code, I read more code. I would say
that makes sense
at this point. I mean, that's probably changing too.
Yep.
So those are separate things, right? I mean, just like if you are a writer versus like a reader, and they're related, but they're separate things. So
they're definitely separate things.
So just the actually hand typing every line of code, that's super different.
Right.
Reading is a little bit different. Probably read more code because there's more code to read.
There's more code to read. Yep.
But even that, I think, is definitely trending toward being just completely results based. Did it work? Having a good plan to test edge cases to make sure it did really work.
Yep.
And that's going to be way more results driven. And it is, depending on the situation, because I have two worlds where sometimes I'm working with a startup and we can go crazy with AI, and other times it's very legacy, been around for forever.
Right.
And you can't for various reasons.
Right. Have your Googling skills atrophied? Because that was a very very valuable skill in knowledge work.
Right. Agreed.
And I remember thinking, this is a very you're going to love how oversimplified this is in terms of categorizing the world of knowledge work. Okay.
Okay. Are you going to say Googlers and non-Googlers?
Everyone used Google.
Yeah.
But there were people who were good at it, and then there was everyone else, right?
Yeah.
And you could just find information way faster than other people.
Yeah. I mean, just to be specific about it, some of my favorites were site :
yes,
fill in a site name and then search, and it limits your search to that, or file type PDF, and then
or using quotes strategically for different parts of a query string.
Yep.
To force exact match. And there are tons of tricks like that
that
were extremely helpful.
I remember reading a short, I say short, but it was a 75-page book on Googling one time. And it had every single trick in the book, and it was extremely useful.
Yeah.
Okay, but the question is, have my Googling skills atrophied?
Because you primarily use LLMs for search, for finding information.
I mean, I definitely don't apply my, Googling skills. I would do it differently. I still use Google sometimes, but I find myself more likely clicking the AI option natively with Google, which I'm sure is what they want. And part of that's probably just muscle memory. And some of it is maybe wanting a little bit faster path to like verify information where I'm already in the browser.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I mean, Perplexity has some cool things too if you want to like take that path. But I think because of that, the obviously like the random like putting quotes around things like that's for sure atrophied. But
Yep.
I'm probably like less. And I search from LLM sometimes too, depending on what it is. But if I want to like quickly get to like source material, like I would still start with probably Google's AI thing or Perplexity, so I can quickly get to like a source material.
Yep.
Which I'm finding is becoming more important. Like say you're trying to find like prompts or like skills or something, like like I pay way more attention now to like who made the thing or like where it came from than I probably used to.
When you say the thing
That
what
I'm
do you
looking
mean?
for. So like if it's a bit of code or like an example of how to do something,
right.
like because there's just so much going on with like skills is a big thing right now in AI, like essentially like bits of code that can make your AI smarter or better at doing a thing.
Yep.
Like there's a ton of like security problems with random people like putting out like a Gmail skill and it has all this like prompt injection, like security nightmare stuff in it.
Yep.
So because of that, like, whereas before I probably would have been less likely to like care where it came from. And it was just more like, yeah, like seems like a lot of people using this. Like I'll go like one I found the other day, I went and looked up like who created it and where they work and like, you know, like actually vetted it. And I would not have gone to that trouble like in the past.
You're having to be more discerning.
Yeah. Right. So that's a change. But then the other change is like, you can be way lazier as to like not having to like exactly what type or like get the wording perfect. Like you can be lazier and get good results.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
What about you on searching for information? Let's keep it like
I've probably moved, I was going to say 75%, but it's probably more to using LLMs for finding information.
Right.
And usually I would say I go to Google in two situations.
Okay.
One is if I can't find what I'm looking for in the LLM search, which happens sometimes, right? It's like, there's something that something in my prompt is not getting me the type of results that I want, and it's not citing the right type of information, etc. And I'll give you an example of that. I was looking for a quote for a blog post, and I remembered pieces of the quote or the theme of the quote, but I could not remember the exact quote, and I couldn't remember who. I thought it was Mark Twain. It actually ended up he's misquoted as saying it. He actually didn't say it.
Yeah. Super common with Mark Twain, I've found.
He's so quotable. He's so quotable.
Yep.
So the quote is, I'm paraphrasing slightly, history, people say history repeats itself.
Right.
That's not exactly true, but history rhymes.
Yeah. I've heard that attributed to him before.
Not Mark Twain, but
it sounds like it could be.
Totally.
Which is the
he did have a very
LLM
similar
problem.
quote. He had a very similar quote.
Okay.
Anyways, I just couldn't get the LLM to return results or source material that was helpful. And so I ended up going to Google and I found it. So that's one example of what I
do you go to Google? Do you reach for Google or for a different LLM when you have that problem typically?
I usually just go to Google.
Yeah, same. And I realized that I could, because I was thinking while you were back to the original question to me, personally, like I almost never use Google. It's just the coding thing where I'm like, I really need to like make sure like this is not going to be a problem, just because what I do professionally. But personally, like would use some various LLM and honestly, like Google, what is it? The Google Flash is what we both use this software called Raycast on our Macs. Like my default for Raycast is set to Google Flash, like whatever their thing is, which is great at searching, like as you might imagine.
Yeah.
And then Perplexity is good. too. And then there's another company called EXA, like EXA, that like does some neat stuff. And I haven't done in depth, like I couldn't tell you like exactly what I think is better for what. But anyways, all that to say, especially personally, or just if I want some quick information, like I actually do use Google's like LLM thing directly, like for my computer.
Yeah. Google is more efficient for if you have a pretty good idea of what you're looking for, but you can't remember the exact URL or whatever.
Exactly.
It's way more efficient than an LLM because it has to do the search. It issues the queries. It summarizes the information.
Yep.
The form factor of the search results, is not great in a lot of cases. You have to kind of dig around, for the source material.
Right.
So I would definitely say advanced Google skills are atrophying, but I would argue, and this is really where I wanted to start digging deep in the conversation, I would argue that the way that we find information has fundamentally changed, and so you're building new skills. And so I don't think that the atrophy of those advanced Google skills is a bad thing because I don't think they're going to be necessary anymore.
Well, and I think I'm starting to think about the skill atrophy in buckets. One was the skill always just an ends to a mean anyways? Or like that's the bucket number one. Bucket number two for me is this like a core fundamental skill.
Okay, give me an example of each of those. Yeah. So means to end and then
means
core
to
skill.
an end. The perfect example is what we've been talking about. It's Google. Like, let me Google something. Like, it's super means to an end. Like, I just need the end result. I do not care how I get there. I just want it to be efficient and fast and whatever. One that's more in the middle, and I think moving to a means to an end, is coding in general. Like on a normal, and you know what's helpful actually in thinking about this is thinking about how you work professionally versus live like your personal life. Like, if there's no crossover. So for example, like I speak in English in my personal life and professionally, like maybe I use slightly different words, but like it's kind of there, like very core skill. But, and coding is kind of one of those things where like, I don't personally, I probably do more than I used to, but like I don't personally do a lot of like coding for fun. It's just it's my job.
Right.
And that one for me is more of a means to an end thing of like, if I could just like say English and get what I wanted, then like I would prefer to do that. I think there are some people that are split on that like really just love the process and like that's not their preference for coding. But from a business mindset, like every business owner like would prefer for them to say English and code to be written. And whether there's still steps in between, but maybe like long term there's not. So I think that one's like nuanced, but long term like it was pretty much an ends to a mean, at least from like the highest level of an organization, always an ends to a mean. I think, so those are my bucket one. And then bucket two of like core skills for me, I think communication stays as a core skill. Writing, speaking, having organized thoughts, all of that like stays as a core skill but could atrophy depending on how you're using AI. Like and we'll talk more about that, I think, in a minute. So that's one of my like big buckets of core skills. And then closely related to that would be critical thinking, strategic thinking, like that skill. Which could also atrophy because more and more you could outsource that to AI. And then my last one would be something around like creativity, like creative problem solving, creative thinking. Is another one where you could outsource to AI, and that one can be used for good or for bad, right? AI can kind of expand your creativity, or it can limit it because you're just like, I don't know, like whatever it says, we'll do that. So what would you add to that, or how would you modify the buckets for you personally?
I think that I would probably, I agree on fundamental skills. And just light commentary on the core fundamentals. I think that there's way more danger in letting those atrophy.
Okay.
Because I think like the lived human experience is it is the most valuable input to those core skills.
Okay.
Right. And so, but that takes critical thinking and reflection and processing.
Right.
And I think that if you don't let those atrophy, your use of AI will be, you'll get more leverage out of AI.
Right.
Because it's an augmentation, not a replacement.
Right.
The means to an end bucket, I would probably split that bucket. And there are sort of, I would split the bucket into two. And the way that I'm thinking about it off the cuff here is that you have sort of automation of things that are not super high value work, right? So,
Sure.
For example, I'll give you an example of a skill that is I'm very thankful is atrophying for me.
Okay. All right.
Formatting documents very quickly. So I mean,
Yeah.
I
Sure.
literally have keyboard shortcuts and keys remapped on my keyboard. For one of the primary purposes is to navigate a text document, copy, cut, replace text without touching the mouse and just doing it all. My key repeat rate is, I think, the fastest that you can configure it from the command line.
Okay.
Like,
but you're saying that's atrophy.
I just don't use it as much anymore
Okay,
because formatting a text document is it's
Trivial,
such a great job for an LLM, right?
Right.
And so there's that sort of thing where you sort of build up these. It's a means to an end, right? I just want to get a document like reformatted, right? And so you can sort of throw that away. But then I do think there are other, and I'm trying to think of a good example, but there are other skills where the process, I think, is an important part of it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I see what you mean. Like writing is like an obvious example, at least to me, of that.
Yep.
But there's others too.
Yes.
Which the other side of the coding piece is, I mean, there is an argument that understanding how the code works is part of the process. And I think should be and will be for a while. Like actually, we talked about this with a group last week, and there's a just really expert level developer, technical DevOps person, IT operations person that was saying how they're writing less code, but they're still reading a lot of code, finding things that they would architect differently. So they're essentially like kind of have an architect hat on. And the most interesting thing that he brought up was that the particular thing he was working on, code was fine, code worked, architecture was fine, no like scalability or bad problems or even security problems. But he said, all of that being the case, I knew how to do it 10 times cheaper than it was planning to do it.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is interesting, right?
Claude Code, it was going to be, I remember that. He said,
whatever
it was
the
going to be
feature
$5,000 a month or $10,000 a month. And he's like,
versus like a couple $100.
Yeah, a couple $100. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a thing where like probably will like over time like get better, but a very interesting use case where nobody would know. Like there's not a security problem. And from Claude's perspective, like you didn't say to optimize for cost. No security problem, no this, no that. Like it's fine. It's expensive. Like who cares?
Yeah.
From their perspective. So
you mentioned writing, and I mean I write for my job,
right?
And I mean I have for a long time. It's not a job title,
right?
I guess it's how
full circle for you, right? I think early on in your career, you
I did a lot of writing in an agency.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
yep.
Right.
So
that's kind of interesting.
I haven't thought about that. That is very cool. Full circle. This is what's interesting about that, because it's hard to put writing in those two buckets that you mentioned.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why for me,
personally,
and how I think about atrophy, because I deal with this every single day. Deal with it's probably not the right word. I experience the impact of AI on writing as a skill every single day.
Right.
So the main thing that I would say is I actually think that good writing is good thinking.
Sure.
I mean, you can, someone could write very elegant prose that's really bad thinking, right?
Yeah,
That's
it's
possible,
nonsensical.
right?
Yeah.
So when I say good writing, I sort of mean objectively good writing
Right.
is ultimately just the manifestation of good thinking.
Yeah. Right.
And so I can't separate those two in
Sure.
my mental model for writing.
Right.
So I view writing as a core skill.
Right.
The thinking part is most important, but then there are, let's say, like the tactical components of style,
Yeah.
grammar, narrative,
Right.
sort of taking those thoughts and actually, materializing them on a page.
Right.
And there's skill there as well. And what's been interesting for me is that, so I actually recently made a decision on where I will use AI in writing. And this is somewhat of a human experiment. So
Right.
we'll have to check back in on this,
Nice.
in a couple weeks or months. So I use AI for writing at Vercel extremely heavily. I mean,
Sure.
I rarely create any content without using AI as part of the process, as like a core part of the process.
Right.
And that's true for most people on the team. And people have different methodologies. I mean,
Right.
one of the writers on the team I work with actually exclusively uses Claude Code with a local file system.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it's pretty
Right.
awesome.
Yeah.
And I've tried a bunch of different methodologies, which is probably, fun to talk about on another episode. But, the writing team is it's a very skilled, experienced group of people. And
Right.
so we all use AI like crazy, but
Right.
there's a final human pass on it,
Right.
which is very critical. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't
Right.
publish anything without that.
Right. Well, and you say final human pass, like a lot of humans
Yes.
going over.
Multiple humans. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It goes, the review process is very
it's
extensive.
different. Yeah.
But the rate at which you can translate your thoughts into drafts and iterate,
Right.
especially in a group, AI is such an extreme accelerant to that.
Right.
Or find the right information, or double check code samples that you're putting into a post. I mean,
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought of that because there's so many like bugs and docs out there with like code samples, and having an LLM be like, hey, actually, can you grab this and compile it and see if it works? Like,
Totally.
It's
I mean,
super cool.
It's
Yeah.
awesome. But there is, and I mean, it's a commercial business, right? And
Right.
so,
Right.
you're not writing a novel.
Yeah. Right.
You're producing content as part of a commercial entity. But I noticed that my tendency, which is I think a very common thing for humans, is to follow the path of least resistance. And when you run into
Right.
a friction in writing,
Right.
which happens all the time, you just use AI to break through the barrier.
Yep.
And that is really, really helpful in a lot of situations. But
You're talking like what traditionally like called writer's block, or do you mean like something else?
so here's a very specific example. So I wrote a post, I think it was published this week. We'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
And one of the tricky things about the post was you sort of define a narrative arc for it. And sometimes it's really difficult to determine how important pieces fit into the narrative arc.
Okay.
So I have data or I have examples that really
Right.
prove the point. But sometimes you need to actually do major surgery and restructure the post in order to include information that's going to make the narrative more compelling
Yes.
overall.
Sure.
That's a very tricky thing.
Yep.
It's a very tricky thing to solve in a concise way, because you
Right.
can just make something long and sort of solve it through brute force,
Yeah.
or whatever. But doing that in a concise way is very difficult. And on the one hand, it's very helpful to use AI to like rapidly iterate through
Right.
multiple types of restructuring, etc. But and I definitely do that sometimes. But I thought that's actually a skill that, because that particular content is written for humans to read, which is different than I would say documentation and
Right.
content is changing, right? Where
Right.
a lot of it's going to be read by agents, right? But this content was specifically for humans to read.
Right.
I thought, okay, understanding the audience and the narrative and the interpretation of this is a really critical writing skill, and I don't want that to atrophy.
Okay.
But it's tricky because AI is very, very helpful in sort of rapidly iterating through that.
Right.
So my solve, that was a very long way of saying my solve for this is that I don't use AI at all writing on my personal blog.
Nice. Yeah.
So end to end, my posts start in a markdown document, and I don't use AI at all. The only way that I use AI is to search for links or other things like that.
Sure.
And that's actually, I mean, earlier this summer, I wrote several posts that were augmented by AI, and I sort of used it, pretty heavily in the process for editing and other things like that.
Right.
But it is just, let's call it bare metal, where it's just me and a markdown editor,
Right.
and that's it, end to
Right.
end. And what I have found, at least initially, is that it has made my use of AI far more effective at work. Like, I think I'm way faster at using AI to edit documents
I believe that.
because I think that I can working those muscles, I can sort of see what needs to happen more quickly. And so I can be more specific with AI as opposed to going through like multiple rounds of iteration and sort of offloading that, if that makes
Right.
sense.
That's super interesting. I think I've experienced something a little bit similar but different with AI's amazing ability to take audio to text, which we talked about this earlier today. We talked about dragon dictation.
Dragon dictation.
Been
That's
around
definitely going in the show
15,
notes.
20 years. And they tried to solve this problem. And honestly, like, I didn't realize this, but was like, had gotten pretty good even before all the AI stuff. And then a lot of these companies popped up again, solving the same problem, but with AI, and it's even better now. And a lot of the pitch from the companies, if you go to like Whisperflow's website, is whatever the average typing speed is of a person. Like, you can talk 3 times faster, 2 times faster. True for most people. So I played around with them and was kind of like, like, this is fine. But really, like, more recently have realized that at least for me, and part of this is like job wise, for the last like however many years, I've been in like way more meetings talking. And then when I'm typing, it's like more likely like short form Slack or maybe like coding, like I don't write long form emails like as part of my job. And I really haven't in a long
Neither
in a
do
long
I,
time.
and the data shows that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
We'll link to the show where I
Reference.
analyzed 20 years of email.
That's a great point. So I just got to thinking, like, I've actually spent 15 years refining the skill through being in meetings and conversing with people of thinking in this like auditory way. But then I have this other thing where I think I should sit down and write. Like I don't know that that's going to make sense for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So because of that, I've just found that like it's so good. Like, again, we got to have Raycast on the show. Raycast has an awesome like app like on your phone where you can do audio to text, and it uses like a really good API, and it's very accurate. But you can go on a walk, or you can put it on a table, or whatever you want to do, and then just get a ton of information out on a subject, whether it's like anything, a to-do list, or like planning an architecture for something technical, or whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be perfectly organized. It doesn't. But if you get the content, AI is great at organizing it post like conversation, and then great at like trying to fact check some things, or like if you had open questions, like go research questions. It's just such an interesting like path that was always available and probably always could have taken advantage of, but it is exponentially more useful.
Yes.
And I think I shared this like this morning actually. I was actually in a meeting, and this felt like every few weeks I have these surreal moments. I was in a meeting with somebody, one other person, and on the table we had two tables on the phone, like face up. One of them was
two phones on the table.
Yeah, two phones on the table. Yeah, one of them was a phone with a AI note taker, Granola, which is an awesome note taker. The other one was a phone with ChatGPT on voice mode, and we had two people and the AI like in the meeting, and we had a whiteboard.
Two people and two AIs in the meeting.
Yeah, technically, yeah. One is listening, the other is talking.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can imagine you're in this room and there's a whiteboard
Yeah.
with another person,
Yeah.
and we're like architecting something, and you get to a spot, and we're like, what tool should we use for that? And we literally like just talk to the AI and be like, do a web search, like what are the tools to like do this thing, and you keep writing, and then you keep going, and the efficiency is wild, because that would have been a bunch of takeaways that somebody had to go do and research and come back, but we basically got almost all the options real time.
Amazing.
And then could refine the options and be like, well, is this one better at this or this? And it's just doing web searches. It's not like anything crazy, but it was a surreal experience.
That is wild. I totally agree with you on the voice to text and summarization. I've used it to distill a lot of ideas, because external processing is very helpful.
Yeah.
Like speaking out an idea out loud, because you realize like, oh, that actually is dumb. It seemed good in my head.
Right.
You know, and writing is the same. You know, writing text or typing out text can have the same effect. They're different.
When you blog personally, is that audio part of your process, or do you just start with the writing and the markdown? Like, do you just sit down with markdown file open and just type, or do you often have like some like audio notes that maybe you'd reference the text to?
I don't use audio. I don't use audio generally because I take notes as I think about things. I will jot notes down in a draft. So I use a tool called
have a starting point.
IA Writer.
Okay.
And it's a markdown editor. They have a mobile app. And so there's a folder in there called blog drafts.
Okay.
And I have a bunch of ideas in there. And as I think through things, I will actually just write down notes in there. And so what's interesting about that is the posts will come together over time, and sort of as my thoughts develop on it, you know, a narrative arc will start to appear, and then that helps me think about it even more critically. And then actually writing the post from there is not as difficult and goes pretty quickly. So,
that's cool. I've heard that is a common process for like people that like do blogging, like, and then in a good process.
Yeah, it's been helpful for me. But I have used the audio before, but I haven't used it recently. But it's usually because of the note. You know, it's usually because of the notes thing. But I think there's three things emerging here, which let's close out by breaking down these three things. We'll talk through the three things, and then one of them is a question.
Okay.
So there are skills that atrophy.
Yep.
Right. There are, or skills are atrophying. Is that the right way to say that?
I don't know.
Skills are undergoing atrophy.
Sure.
That's so clinical. Skills are undergoing atrophy.
Right.
We won't name the episode. That will not be the episode title. Okay, so that's happening. New skills are being formed.
Yes.
So, for example, your process of speaking things out or having AI as a collaborator in a meeting, solving a problem, those are new skills, new ways of doing things. Right?
Yeah. Like a super quick example of that, helping somebody with something literally like an hour ago, and they were typing, and I'm like kind of like walking with them, was like, I would love, like, it's like, do you have such and such installed in your computer? He's like, no. I was like, it wouldn't be so great if I could sit here and show you this, and I was just speaking, and the words like typed on your computer and it like did the thing.
Yeah.
Like that can happen. Like we can do that now.
We can do it now.
Yeah.
Yes.
But-
It's amazing. Yeah.
Anyways.
So there's these, and even in writing at Vercel,
Yes.
they're completely new skill sets that I've learned using AI as part of the writing
with AI.
process.
Yep.
Okay. So skills are atrophying. New skills are being
skills are
formed, new
emerging.
ways of doing, right?
Yep.
So like retrieving information a la Google, right?
Right.
That's changing. So the core question is, how do you decide which skills to work on so that they do not atrophy? Which muscles do you need to maintain? Like, how are you thinking about that in your world?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's actually maybe, and we kind of covered this at the beginning of like which ones with the two buckets. So the short answer is like, well, the fundamental ones. And then the real question is like, well, what's fundamental?
Yes.
And I think that depends a little bit person to person as far as like, what do you want? Like, cause if you're in two levels, like one, let's just like say let's use the like strength training analogy. Like, cool. What do you want? Like you can strength train and the goal is like longevity and overall health, and like you can strength train to be a bodybuilder, right? So there's that like intensity and like what's your goal piece. And you can also like kind of train for like flexibility versus like overall like how much like weight can I move, which is kind of another thing. So I think that like applied to skill atrophy is like there's big buckets like communication, like we talked about, and you may really try. And I think you need to pick one inside of communication to keep sharp, but you don't necessarily need to like keep all of them sharp. Like for example, because I think there's going to be so much more fluidity. And the perfect example is like writing versus like communication and speaking. If you have one of those sharp, like it's like properly ordered thinking is like kind of the like the tie together. So that's the most important one. But then like the outcome of like whether you do it through writing or through speaking matters a little bit less, because transitioning between the two is going to come really easy.
Agreed.
So that to me, for me, the way I think about it is I've got to keep the like critical thinking, ordered thinking like piece sharp. How it like comes out actually matters less, because the transition between the like either writing or speaking is like almost seamless.
Yeah. What a great point.
And that can come to some practicality of like who you are as a person, what are your natural skills, etc. But that's how I think about it on that. And then since we haven't touched on it much, the creativity piece is really interesting. And I think that's the one that I probably have the most question marks about, because there's an aspect of AI where like I didn't think about it that way, like happens all the time, right? But there's another aspect where I said this to a friend the other day, is like, imagine, and this is in the software world, imagine every single app that existed was written by the same developer with the same brain. I mean, that's weird. Yeah. And essentially like anybody can talk to that developer and ask it to do things. Right. And then real world is like, well, imagine there's about 5 of them and they like basically are the same, but they're a little bit different. So and the bigger question is like, how does that fundamentally change things? But specific to this and the skill atrophy, it just really got me thinking of as far as like any amount of creativity that is like different than in like, again, in coding land, than the one software brain that's doing all the things becomes extremely valuable.
That's super interesting.
And then the question is like, how do you get there? Because if it's essentially like trained on like all knowledge, like, or it's trending toward training on like all like digital knowledge, let's call it that. Like what would be the things that would make it so you have some kind of like creativity piece that maybe it doesn't have? And I don't know the answer to that question. I think that's a very difficult question.
That's an interesting example. I ran into that recently. I was writing a video script, and actually we were doing production on the video, so actually recording. It was a demo, sort of a long form narrative demo, and which was very fun, by the way, to sort of write a script end to end and then like do production on it.
And like such a quick turnaround too, right? Like I know if you're in more traditional media role, I mean, that's like a long process.
Yeah. It was quick. But the production team at Vercel is outstanding.
Yeah,
and the
I'm
guy
sure.
who was actually doing the demo, who I wrote the script for, was outstanding. And so it was very, very, it was like shockingly quick.
Super cool.
But
Yep.
it was very interesting because I heavily used AI to help me think through what's very difficult with the demo with screen sharing, where the person is also being videoed, is how do you do cuts at various points, especially if you're using AI and it's thinking. You
Right.
want it to be authentic,
Sure.
but you don't want to like
Bore people. Yeah.
bore people.
Right.
There are just a number of, it's very tricky actually to do that in a way that feels very natural.
Right.
And to write in a way that someone can speak as opposed to
Yeah.
like read. And then you have these aspects of like, I had to determine an example application that made narrative sense, like could be built in the sequence that the demo needed to happen in to show these different products in a very particular sequence,
Right.
and seem real and legitimate, like be an actual use case.
Yeah.
And it was AI was very helpful, but it also we live changed some things because they're like, there's a better way to do this. It would be really cool if we did this or this, Anyways, that creativity piece, it was I had that very experience where it was like, okay, it was so high context, like in the moment, that it was cool to see human creativity like flourishing in that moment of multiple people exchanging ideas and coming up with a better implementation of, a decent idea, but a much better way to do it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And then there's the other, like, if you're in software today and you're innovating and doing a lot of new stuff, like the training still lags. So it's not like it's been trained on whatever like brand new thing you're doing.
Right.
Like it has a lot of like information that would be relevant, but there's that too.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my closing thoughts on how do you decide what to let atrophy?
Yep.
I have two sort of big points on that. Major points? I don't know. I have two thoughts on that.
Yeah.
They're major.
Theses.
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 Wow. Yes.
It's been a long week.
It has been a long week. The first one is that I think it is. I think reframing the way that I think about AI is a big part of approaching the atrophy question well, because this is interesting. If you think about almost all of our conversation, it's in the context of using AI to automate something that we used to do.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
That is a fundamentally limiting framing of the tool.
Yeah.
Right? What's very interesting if we think about writing is that, because the default is, okay, it can crank out a blog post for you really quickly, right? Or it can get you an outline really quickly or whatever, right? That's the wrong way to think about it. You can use the tool to become a better writer.
Right. Yeah.
It can teach you. Right? And I'm not saying it's a full replacement for like experience, practice, whatever.
Deeper, well-researched, better documented, literally have it critique.
Exactly.
Exactly. All of those things. Yeah.
So that I think is, it's almost an inversion in saying like, okay, skills are going to atrophy, but ironically, the things that you can fight atrophy using the threat to atrophy, right?
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Which means there's going to be a huge divergence in people.
Yes, I agree.
And how they use AI and how they think about AI.
Yep. So I think that's a really big one. Another example would be, I use AI as a great way to learn things, right? In voice mode. One thing that I love to do if I'm driving around by myself is to just pick a topic that I'm really interested in. I did this with economics. So I turned ChatGPT voice mode on. Yeah. I asked for historical examples of commoditization, throughout history.
Right.
What happened during the Industrial Revolution? Yep. What were the different impacts of that? Just asking it questions, right? And you have an unbelievable repository of information,
right?
And so you can sort of do advanced study on economics while you're driving to the grocery store.
I did this with, I've been kind of obsessed with the Gilded Age recently.
That's Mark Twain. He coined
that. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So, which is like like John D. Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan, like Vanderbilt, those guys. Because a lot of people have said like the closest like thing in history of an innovation-driven like boom, because World War II doesn't, because that's war-driven, has been that. So we should talk about that.
Okay, there's an episode on that.
Yeah.
Okay, the second thought on atrophy is that it's, again, a kind of a reframing of the way you think about AI. Instead of thinking, okay, what can I outsource to AI
Right.
and what should I not outsource to AI, I think a better way to frame it is what skills will make me more effective in using AI to do the things that I want to do,
Yeah.
right? So, for example, working with data, you don't need to continue to progress in your ability to handwrite,
SQL. Yeah.
handwrite SQL,
Whatever. Yeah.
right? Window functions. Okay, just let AI do that for
sure.
you, right?
Sure.
The right question, I believe, is what are the skills and muscles that you need to either maintain or build in
Right.
order to use AI for data?
Yeah.
Right? And some of those are going to be existing skills that are at threat of atrophy because of the path of least resistance that will eventually diminish your ability to use AI well for data.
Right.
And some of those I think are going to be new skills.
Yeah. And I think one of the new skills, again, we could do a whole show on this, is the meta work
Yes.
of like the tools that build the tools.
Yes.
Like that's where I think a lot of work is going. It's you're working on the tools that build the tools.
Yes, I agree. All right. I'm going to go write a blog post without AI.
All right.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
We'll catch you on the next one.